Okay. Can you hear right? Okay. Okay. So I think just a little recap with regards to what happened last week was I will just share with regards to financial literacy, which is the understanding the simple concept of financial statements, the instruments that's out there, as well as the importance of all of them lah. And why we should start, as early as we can. So for those who is joining for the first time, I'm actually doing this, as a sharing, cause out of my passions. At the very same time, it's actually to learn from everyone else as well. I'm not a consultant yet, so if you have any question whatsoever, do your own diligence research and everything, or consult a financial consultant. This is not investment advice, and I'm just doing it for entertainment purposes only. So yeah, moving on. To understand the broad picture of global affairs itself, I think to put it in layman term is like how one country actions actually affect another's, including themselves as well. So it's like more of like how does the trade war, between US and China affect so many other countries around them. I'll touch on that a little bit later on. So what I'm going to talk about today is economic analysis, economic cycle, as well as what's happening around the world. So for economic analysis, it's more of like a top-down approach where as an investor or whatsoever, or a business owner, what you want to look for before you enter that particular industry or sector is to understand the business as a whole and what is affecting it and what could be the potential that's affecting it. So business and industry analysis is actually to understand the current market and the economy lah. Factors that could, like I mentioned earlier, like commodities itself, how does the trade war affect it, as how does COVID affect the tourism sector. Financial statement itself is covered like last week. I'll touch a little bit more in depth next week as well. It's actually to see the financial health of the company. Pricing and risk analysis itself, I'll be covering them more of the company valuation portion. So moving on, economic cycle itself. I try to keep it as simple as you can. So actually, supply and demand, buyer and seller in layman term, the most simplistic way to understand. It's actually the sum of transactions going through between the buyers and the sellers. All in all, this transaction is actually to boost the economy by itself. So one man's spending is another man's earning. So all these transactions actually take place within the individual respective market, like the stock market, the energy market, the car market, and stuff like that. So all these market adds up together and becomes what we know as the economy itself. So by right, there's respectively by right 4 phases. However, to make it simpler and easier to understand, easier to grasp, would be to understand when times are doing what is called the economic expansion. When times are bad, we call it a recession. So when debts grow faster than income, you get recession, vice versa. So short-term debt cycle usually lasts around 3 to 8 years, whereas for long-term debt cycle, it normally runs and range between 50, 75 years each. Yeah. Moving on to what's actually happening in our world, I think there are 4 main things that we can focus on that is affecting Singapore. I'll touch and go on certain things and go into more depth with regards to what's more relevant. As for the rest, I'll probably just elaborate a little bit more for simple understanding lah. Okay, the first one will be trade tensions. Started in July 2018. First sign of conclude or truce will be on the 15th of Jan, but then there's no concrete conclusion yet. So to boil down, to understand what this whole thing is about, is we need to understand what is the thing called tariff. So tariff is actually tax that is tax on to imports and exports between sovereign states. So tax being paid outside the country. So if have income tax, or let's say for example capital tax or whatever, it's all within the country, the GDP itself, which contribute to GDP lah. But as for other tax is overseas, it's out of the country. So actually this whole saga started way back in 2001 when US actually welcomes China into the World Trade Organization. So as China becomes more and more successful, US isn't quite as happy. And the reason is because the US claims that they didn't play fair in the sense that China grows so well, but then because they didn't improve or they didn't grow towards a more westernized economy, but things start to differ as they become more successful. So Chinese they treat their own company pretty differently by exempting tax. So what I mean by when they exempt tax is there's low barrier entry. So let's say if I'm a Chinese and I want to start a business in China, If let's say I want to start building a you know like an office tower from scratch. Like I probably don't have to pay for the land itself, or I'll pay minimally as comparatively to someone coming from overseas. They have to pay in full due lah. Yeah. So China actually imposed a higher tariffs on American commodities such as soybean. American only grow these just to export mainly lah, majoritarily to China. And having this tariff being imposed on the Americans, the farmer, their life got got tougher a little after this. So the reason why US then imposed restriction, I mean like to retaliate in a sense, they actually imposed restriction on Chinese firms mainly in the tech industry, such as like Huawei, which is the most well-known one. I mean, the reason being is because they wouldn't want the Chinese people to steal technology, like expertise or whatsoever from US and like incorporate into China production and stuff like that. So however many of these US business actually is not say over reliant, but they are actually relying on Huawei technology. So the community sector is one of them, whereby they use for the irrigation system and stuff like that. So if you zoom out and you try to understand how does this affect Singapore, is you can take as China being the mom, the dad being the states, US, is that when your dad get angry, your family tends not to give a shit. I'm not saying that is not great, but yeah. But as when your mom get angry, you know that shit turns south, you know. And what I'm saying is because Singapore is more reliant on China comparatively to US, and I'll share more of that later in a bit. So moving on, price war. So this has to do with the oil price that has not met, I would say, not met the agreement between Saudi and Russia itself. So understanding that US and China, you know, they are the largest oil consumption, and knowing that taking this opportunity and understanding that Russia and US, they tend to have certain kind of conflicts. Given that Russia wouldn't want to, you know, make the oil price go down, as this will benefit US. So in a sense that some sort of this kind of agreement actually initially supposed to take place on the 2nd of April to discuss further, but then like it was being delayed and no conclusion was met. So I think let's talk about how it affects Singapore as a whole. Is because Singapore GDP, Singapore GDP, you know, for oil export, it sums up to 17%, based on past February 2020 lah, and I'll show you in a bit regards to the graph and everything. So we're the greatest export in terms of refined oil in Asia, and that is also why when the price dip, it affects Singapore to a certain extent. So why I say that is because you can take it as like a GDP as like a Singapore income kind of thing. So if let's say our GDP will drop, our income will drop, we are not able to subsidize in the respective sectors such as healthcare and education, which is one of the most crucial one given this period and this point of time. So yeah, so moving on, I'll just share with you regards to how it's like. So as we can see here, the export itself, give me a while. Yeah. So as we can see here, the export itself, we are able to see that we export quite a huge sum out, like 13% in terms of oil wise. So if let's say the price will drop, it will definitely affect us in many ways. And further down, we are able to see who we are exporting more towards. See how we are exporting and importing origin from. I mean, the relationship between us and China is pretty, I would say, substantial comparatively to the United States, which is pretty low in comparison. So yeah, back to the topic. So for this itself, understanding Federal Reserve System. So this one is the third point. The Federal Reserve System is like the MAS of Singapore. They're the central bank within the United States. Recently they lowered the interest rate, and I think how does it affect Singapore as a sense? So before that, we got to understand what is central bank. Central bank is actually an institute whereby they manage the money supply interest rates within the states itself. Why did US? The next question is, why did US lower the interest rate? This in order to boost their spending within the economy as borrowing becomes cheaper, to encourage people to borrow and spend and stuff like that. So Singapore has actually lowered the interest rate as well. Though we did it earlier. We've got to thank our government for that. However, what does it truly mean in terms of the business world context? So lowest interest when interest rate became lower, it encouraged people to borrow more. But on the other hand, it also make full use of it's like the MS of USA. So it's like they are more or less, how should I put this? Okay, they are able to refinance in a sense that to make their debt a little bit cheaper in a sense. Okay, so I give you another example is that, for example, now your moms go to the bank for to get a fixed D. So let's say the fixed D is at 2%. So in order for the bank to pay your mom that 2%, your mom got to find probably a lender. So let's say for example, this business owner decided to take a loan and the bank charged them at 3% interest rate. So right now, when the bank receives the money, the 3% interest rate, the bank is able to pay the 2% to your mom and keep the 1% as a profit. So right now, what happens if let's say the interest rate were to drop to 1%, the bank still have to pay your mom that 2%. However, the remaining 1% is that margin that where the bank has to think of how they can get it. And that's the reason why the economy is not doing pretty well now. If let's say the interest rate were to have a sudden drop in it at this moment. And even worse is what the US government is trying to do now. They're trying to print more money up to $2 trillion or even more to help in the business affected by the outbreak. Which which is good, but however, in the long run, it's going to affect the economy in the sense that unemployment is going to go up. I myself also is unsure so what's going to happen from now, and it doesn't look too good at this point of time. So moving on, the last one that is affecting or is a contributing factor within the economy will be the current virus of the COVID-19. Unemployment around Singapore has not yet to be announced yet, but we can already feel the pressure that's coming, is mounting on us. Strains in the manufacturing sectors and major operation cuts in like sectors surrounding hospitality. And in my opinion, all of this is indirectly affecting the confidence in terms of the investor portion, be it whether you're a foreigner or you're a Singaporean. As you know, Singapore is a financial hub by itself. So as we know that Singapore relies, not mainly, but relies quite dependently on net export itself, as well as outsourcing in terms of the business portion point of view. So how does this this disruption affect us? So Philippines by itself, actually they are seizing all services such as like the telco and whatsoever, all the telemarketing and stuff. Vietnam is actually closing down majority of its factories, shutting down in a sense. The Japan retail store are also closing down, and these are few examples that I'll be sharing with you. But then across the globe in the Asia region, most of the country, they are either locking down or they are like shutting down majority of their respective sectors and stuff that is affected. So the worst part is there's no conclusion to no conclusive idea as to when this thing will end. We're not sure when the virus is going to go away and stuff like that. So there's a lot of uncertainty involved and like revolving around this whole topic. I think last but not least is in the States itself at this point of time, there's 6.6 million that has already filed for unemployment claims. Then upon this circuit breaker within Singapore, we could also mean that there's a tighter constraints and we can, there's unforeseen, we can already foresee certain people are starting, certain company are starting to let go their employees already, which is not a great news, but there's ups and lows within the economy. So we can learn from this as well as how we can take this time to how to improve yourself and stuff. But that's sidetrack a bit. Okay. So I think all in all, in order to understand global affairs by itself, I think there's more to it than meets the eye. Among many things, knowing what the current or global affairs, is aside from being a good conversation starter, I think it also helps in terms of fine-tuning your decision making. If let's say you want to do any investment or want to start a certain kind of business, that aside, I think as a Singaporean, I think we should also know that our government is actually doing their very best, to minimize all the external factors that's actually happening around the world to impact, Singapore, making sure that all us as Singaporeans, we are able to, go through this together and like get into a better shape than before when this thing is all over. So I'm not a pro PAP person, but I would like to say that given what our government has done, the policy that's implemented comparatively to other nations, whatever is stated within the econs textbook is actually used by our government itself. So, I mean, like they are able to foresee the bigger picture and implementing policy step by steps. People can ask like why we don't lock down from the very beginning. So I think the first few things they're gonna understand is this is a pretty big question, but I think two key points surrounding it would be like Singapore is a financial hub, we got free trade and everything. Things still have to carry on moving. The second thing would be like the economy is not as big as China, so shutting down a few capital in China will affect them comparative to if we were to shut down within Singapore. Like the pain that the pain to the economy is gonna be way greater comparative to if China were to do the same thing. So our government is able to see things from a macro point of view, which is the reason why where we are today. So in order to ensure our confidence within Singaporeans as well as our foreign neighbors and stuff like that. And I think most importantly is to keep us safe lah, which we gotta be very thankful for that. But yeah. So if you have any questions, I mean, I hope all this information is like, well served and understandable. So if you have any question, like feel free to let me know. Yeah. So okay, I'll answer the question one by one. I think one of the question that I have here is okay, how does T2 closure affects SIA? Okay, we're gonna understand that SIA is a very huge company by itself. They have, I think, if my memory serves me right, they have 202 carriers. 195 is meant for commercial flights, and the remaining 7 is for cargo flights. So having them shut down one terminal for 18 months, actually, I won't say it's not a big deal, but I mean, like, it won't affect much given the current situation. They have other terminals that are still operating, and SIA is actually converting some of their commercial flights into cargo flights, means they use it for transportation purposes and stuff like that. In order, T2 cut down is understandable because they at the same time they had to minimize costs. At the same time, they had to find alternative way to generate revenues. So I think what SIA do is a, I would say, understanding approach. So yeah. So the next question is, how long do you think the Trump-China trade thing will take? Truth be told, I'm not sure, and how can it affect us? Like I mentioned to you, it will affect our trade. Definitely will affect our trades. So how long do it last? I think it really gotta depend if let's say Trump can get into can be re-elected or not. But we also gotta understand that whether is it unfair or not, or if let's say Trump is not president now, you think if let's say this thing were to take place, I would say given Trump being here, I think it's a good thing that's happening to the US because past president that was elected back then, no one has actually raised this problem, raised this issue up, or speak on behalf of the people which is affected, such as the people within the commodity sector. There's really a lot going on behind the scenes, I would say, that Trump managed to, stand up for the people and everything, making America great. That's what he say. But I don't want to be too one-sided. I mean, yeah. So what are the aftermath of this, virus and the relationship of China and US around the world? I think US helping other country is I mean, like, all major powers are helping like everyone else, but how relationship, whether US will sort of like whether China will sort of like overpower US is another question, because you gotta understand the language barrier. US by itself is they have actually established, I mean, aside from World War II, they actually established that every nation, the base language is actually English, and USD tends to be the base currency in regardless of what kind of trades you're having. As for China, for example, you want to make business with US, it's much easier because we all speak English. But if let's say China were to be the next superpower, then like that's another question because we will have to learn Chinese itself. And when China make deals with other country, they tends to have string attached. While as for US, when they do that, then normally, as in, it's given that they will expect you to help them back in terms of crisis, but normally there isn't any string attached. It's like how when Singapore helps Indonesia or whatsoever, there's really no string attached and everything. So yeah. The other question is, what will printing money affect us and how in the long run? How it's gonna affect in the long run? Printing of that money itself, you gotta understand that printing of money is considered under monetary policy, and you gotta understand how US is being run comparatively to Singapore. You know that US government system is gonna be is actually short term in terms of that comparative to Singapore. Singapore PAP, you know that they're gonna stay for a substantial amount of time. Our opposition party, I mean, you guys yourself, you all know what have they done and everything. So PAP probably going to stay here for a very long time. That's why they're able to implement fiscal policy, which is good for the economy. As for monetary policy, normally it's good for the short run, which is what the US government need. Because the people themselves, they want to see results, which the only way to do that is to implement monetary policy. In this case, is to print money. But it's going to affect the economy in the long run because valuation of USD is definitely going to drop. And trades and everything is going to affect all of them. So I'm not sure how this is going to unfold. I'm not sure how the US government is going to handle it. So we shall see in the future and stuff like that. Feedback here. Okay, what's the content accuracy of the SG depend on the China more than the US? Okay, so for this, right, it's just basing on number on like how much we export to these various countries. So for example, if let's say it's just very simple, like you just export how many quantities to this country, how many quantity, then you just based on that to come up with the percentage and the chart. So from here, we are able to see, I mean, your question is the accuracy of Singapore dependence on China or comparatively to USA. So it's like that. So we know that Singapore export mainly reliant on other than petroleum and oil and stuff like that, is actually semiconductors, which is integrated circuits lah. And from this amount of exports, we can see how much are going out and to who. So majority of it is going to Hong Kong, followed by China. I mean, like, and given that a small amount is going to the United States, which is about 5.2%. Accuracy wise, I think would be dependent on the data where you're getting from. Certain website extract data differently lah. So yeah, so do your own research and stuff like that to find out more. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so how MAS and how it affects the SIBOR is going back to these slides. The central Fed rate system by itself, they didn't exactly touch on. I mean, Singapore do follow United States in a sense, but at this point of time, the government decided to lower the interest rate before. I don't know whether they did foresee or not, because I'm not the government themselves. I don't know whether they foresee that the United States is going to cut their interest rate. But one thing I do know is upon US cutting, the Singapore rate sort of like follows suit in a sense. They didn't actually increase one way or another. So if you ask me whether how related are they, I would say to a certain degree, but not entirely, because different economy really works differently. And like I mentioned, Singapore, we rely really on fiscal, while as for US, they actually rely on monetary lah. Yeah. Any more questions? If don't have, I will thank you for your time. Yeah, if you have anything, you just let me know. Then hopefully it's simple and understandable. Then like if you get any feedback, you can just like DM me or whatsoever. Other than that, thank you so much for your time and take care. Bye bye.